Hello and welcome. This is Brandy Smith, live in the Forbidden Library, and we're reading once again. Surprise, surprise, on another Sunday. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Namaste Phantom. Hello, Void. Hello, Luke. Hello, Lucas. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Jabba Hop. Time for our weekly helping of 19th century sass, courtesy of Brandy Smith. Yeah, it is. Hello, Brandy. I'm rather tired today, so I'll just look. No worries, Void. You have a lovely look. You chill the heck out. And hi. I'm good, Luke. I'm good. I'm a little sniffly today. We're a little under the weather to a degree. I blame Void because when Void mentioned that they thought I might be under the weather a few streams ago, I started feeling under the weather, so I blame Void. Void brought this upon me. But I'm okay. Hello, Boris. Hi, everyone. We'll be looking on and off as moving boxes to unpack. So excited to be here again. Yes! I'm glad the move seems to be going okay, Boris. Especially if you've got the boxes and everything. It means you're in. Lovely, lovely. Sniffly. I'm a wee bit sniffly. So there may be some sniffles through the stream. I will do my best that if it's going to be a sneeze or a gross sounding sniffle, that I'll mute myself. But luckily, at least I'm not coughing anymore. My throat feels a lot better than Friday when we did Higurashi, so that's great. My throat is not at risk anymore. However, my sinuses are a wee bit blocked. But that's okay. I don't need sinuses to stream. Who needs sinuses anyway? Elizabeth doesn't. I'm going to do my very best to... We're only 30% of the way through this book, you know. This is a very big book. And I'm going to do my best to summarize what's gone on so far. So, Mr. Bingley moved into the neighborhood. And Elizabeth's mother was like, oh my, I might be able to marry off one of my children. Can't blame me for your sniffles just because I notice a very slight change in your voice. It's just me telling, hey, your voice is slightly different. I know, Void, but I didn't notice I was ill at that point. And then you said it, and then I was ill. So, you know, you are the harbinger of my sickness. I know you didn't mean to be. You're like the Absol of my sickness in Pokemon. And if people don't know, Absol's little bit of lore is that he warns about disasters. And people think that he brings the disasters, but no, he's trying to warn people. So that's what Void did to me. Void tried to warn me of my sickness, but instead I blame him. Yeah. And then with Mr. Bingley brought Mr. Darcy. And Mr. Darcy is an arsehole. Oh, Absol gets the blame all the time. Yes, you do. And, so Elizabeth's younger sister Jane is the one Mr. Bingley's taken the most liking to. And they both seem actually really happy with each other, which is lovely. They would genuinely seem to really love each other, which is great. But Mum was a bit of a busybody and sent Jane over to Mr. Bingley's on a horse in the rain, and she got sick. And then Elizabeth was like, fuck this shit, I'm gonna go see my sister. And then her parents were like, no, we can't give you the horses. So she was like, fuck you, I'm walking. So she went there, and she stayed a little bit of time with her sister until she was better. Then they went home. And then that's when they met Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins is their cousin, who will inherit the estate when their father dies. Mr. Collins, who, yes, cousins are a thing, is hoping to marry one of the daughters, in order to, like, make things a little bit easier, I guess, when it comes to running the estate. And he seems to have his eyes on Lady Elizabeth. But you know who else has their eyes on Lady Elizabeth? Mr. Darcy has his eyes on Lady Elizabeth. And Mr. Darcy is a relative of Mr. Collins' patron, who, if you don't know what that means, it's kind of like a Patreon. She pays for Mr. Collins' life, And I don't know what she gets in return, I'm not gonna lie. Good eve upon you from this humble wanderer. Welcome back, Brescio. Welcome. There's also Mr. Wickham, who is a very, very handsome man, who Elizabeth has a thing for. So, she has 3 potential suitors right now. However, Mr. Wickham and Mr. Darcy have a shaded past. They're childhood friends, you see, whom Mr. Wickham's father worked for Darcy's father. Darcy's father apparently promised to look after Mr. Wickham. I'm gonna be honest, it's the Brie is pronounced like Brie. Brescio? Is that what it is? I've added calling people silly in my vocabulary whenever I run into a reckless driver. Silly bastard. You should probably add bastard on the end, really. I think silly drivers deserve at least that much. Yes. But when Mr. Darcy's father did die, Mr. Darcy took over. Mr. Darcy did not look after Mr. Wickham. Apparently, according to Mr. Bingley, this was well deserved, but we know how to write the first time. Okie dokie. Bricio, na. Yeah. So I think that's what we're up to. That's about what we're up to. Oh yeah, and now we're at a ball at Mr. Bingley's house. Mr. Wickham's not there because he decided to not go there because it's awkward as fuck when he and Mr. Darcy is around. He didn't want to deal with that. And I think that's about where we're up to. You've returned to football chat. You have! Yeah, I think that's what we're up to. Oh wait, I forgot to do a thing. No. I've realised I forgot to open the thing that makes the Twitch redeems work. 1 second. Like I said, this will eventually be part of the whole setting up the stream routine, but it takes me a very long time to get used to a routine. Opening up the school. Hydrate! I will drink my tea, Bricio. I will drink my tea. Okay, the thing is open. We're good. Should we test it? There we go. Nice. Oh, wait, and I think you still have my chibi redeems, not my, actual redeems. 1 second! Yes, I am this good at setting up my own streams. What are you talking about? What? Bear with me. Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? Yeah, channel points. That's the one I'm looking for. So... enable that, disable that, disable that, disable that, enable that, disable that, disable that. Okay, cool. You may need to refresh your screens, Twitch people. Because I had to reset which ones did what. There we go. Okay, we can start now. I promise. I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that. Ooh, good addendum. Had a potentially upset Mustang driver yesterday as I passed them in my rusty Honda Civic on the highway last night. Very silly fellow. Oh my gosh, the silliest of fellows. Rightio. In vain did Elizabeth endeavour to check the rapidity of her mother's words, or persuade her to describe her felicity in a less audible whisper. For to her inexpressible vexation, she could perceive that the chief of them, overheard by Mr. Darcy, who sat opposite to them, her mother only scolded her for being nonsensical. What is Mr. Darcy to me, pray, that I should be afraid of him? I don't know. I had to search a little bit for Mr. Wickham's name before the stream because I forgot his name. I'm terrible at remembering people's names in this. I remember Bingley, Elizabeth, Jane. Bennett. Their last name is Bennett. I couldn't remember their last name as well. So I don't 100% remember what I was up to. I remember Mr. Collins going up to Darcy and making an arse of himself. But that is about it. I think this is where we're at, actually. As Elizabeth had no longer any interest of her own to pursue, she turned her attention almost entirely on her sister and Mr. Bingley, and the train of agreeable reflections which her observations gave birth to made her perhaps almost as happy as Jane. She saw her in idea settle in that very house, all in the felicity which a marriage of true affection could bestow, and she felt capable under such circumstances of endeavouring to even like Bingley's two sisters. Her mother's thoughts, she plainly saw, were bent the same way, and she determined not to venture near her lest she might hear too much. When they sat down to supper, therefore, she considered it a most unlucky perverseness which placed them within one of each other, and deeply was she vexed to find that her mother was talking to that one person, Lady Lucas, freely, openly, and of nothing but her expectation that Jane would soon be married to Mr. Bingley. Ah, yes, mother was gossiping. Do you remember Martin? God, I don't remember Martin. Who the bloody heck is Martin? Belly. Bennett, not Belly. Mr. Bingley. It was an animated subject, and Mrs. Bennet seemed incapable of fatigue while enumerating the advantages of the match. Bray, guess what? You're called. No, you! Shit. You got the backsies in before I could say no you. Poo-poo head. He was there in the previous chapter. I don't know. Is that Mr. Collins' first name? Maybe? Or am I being gaslit right now? I don't know. I know what's going on, and I enjoy this book, but good lord, for some reason the names just stick in my head. Do not stick in my head. They fall out my ears. That's the sound they make when they fall out my ears. His being such a charming young man and so rich and living but 3 miles from them were the first points of self-gratulation. And then it was such a comfort to think how fond the two sisters were of Jane, and to be certain that they must desire the connection as much as she could do. It was, moreover, such a promising thing for her younger daughters, as Jane's marrying so greatly must throw them in the way of other rich men. And, lastly, it was pleasant to her time of life to be able to consign her single daughters to the care of their sister, that might not be obliged to go into company more than she liked. It was necessary to make this circumstance a matter of pleasure, because on such occasions it is the etiquette. But no one was less likely than Mrs. Bennet to find comfort in staying at home at any period of her life. She concluded with many good wishes that Lady Lucas might soon be equally fortunate, though evidently and triumphantly believing there was no chance of it. Oh yes, I remember this. She was being a sassy bitch because she was like, oh, I do hope your daughter gets as lucky as mine. Mrs. Bennet. There is a slight possibility that you may perhaps be a little bit gaslit. Only a tiny bit. Oh, we've turned the gas down, but it's a little bit gaslit in here. Good evening, Brian. You wanted everyone. Hello, Red Candy Guy. Welcome. Okay, I'm back in Deadpool and Wolverine. Did I miss anything important or more sassy? No, you didn't. Definitely not more sassy than Deadpool and Wolverine. I went to see that as well. It was so good. It was so good. Nice Ojo-san laugh. I work on that. I want to have the best Ojo-san laugh. It means a lot to me. I would like to have that royal laugh. In vain did Elizabeth endeavour to check the rapidity of her mother's words, or persuade her to describe her felicity in a less audible whisper. "Shut up, mother! Everyone can hear you gossiping!" For to her inexpressible vexation, she could perceive that the chief of it was overwhelmed by Mr. Darcy, who sat opposite them. Her mother only scolded her for being nonsensical. "What is it to me? What is Mr. Darcy to me, pray, that I should be afraid of him? I am sure we owe him no such particular civility as to be obliged to say nothing he may not like to hear." Bitch, why should I care if Mr. Darcy is over there? He can listen to me gossip all he wants. I don't care. Damn, Mum! For heaven's sake, madam, speak lower. What advantage can it be to offend Mr. Darcy? You will never recommend yourself to his friend by so doing. And Elizabeth's like, mother, please, mother. He's the bestie of the man you're trying to marry your daughter off to. Think about that for a minute. Mum be like, did I ask, sweetie? Shut up. Nothing that she could say, however, had any influence. Her mother would talk of her views in the same intelligible voice. Mum, stop gossiping. Elizabeth blushed and blushed again with shame and vexation. She could not help frequently glancing her eye at Mr. Darcy, though every glance convinced her of what she dreaded. For, though he was not always looking at her mother, she was convinced that his attention was invariably fixed by her. The expression of his face changed gradually from indignant contempt to a composed but steady gravity. At length, however, Mrs. Bennet had no more to say, and Lady Lucas, who had been yawning at the repetition of delights which she saw no likelihood of sharing, was left to the comforts of cold ham and chicken. Elizabeth now began to revive, but not long was the internal of tranquillity, for when supper was over, singing was talked of, and she had the mortification of seeing Mary, after very little entreaty, preparing to oblige the company. By many significant looks of silence and entreats did she endeavour to prevent such a proof of complaisance, but in vain. Mary would not understand them. Such an opportunity of exhibiting was delightful to her, and she began her song. Elizabeth's eyes were so fixed on her, with most painful sensations, and she watched her progress through the several stanzas with an impatience which was very ill rewarded of their close. For Mary, on receiving amongst the ranks of the table the hint of hope that she might be prevailed on the favour them again. After the pause of half a minute began another. Mary's powers were by no means fitted for such a display. Her voice was weak, and her manner affected. Elizabeth was agonies. She looked at Jane to see how she bore it, but Jane was very composedly talking to Bingley. She looked at his two sisters and saw them make signs of derision at each other, and at Darcy, who continued, however, impensively grave. She looked at her father to entreat his interference, lest Mary should be singing all night. He took the hint, and when Mary finished her second song, said aloud, "That will do well, child. Shut up, you're terrible. You have delighted us long enough. Let other ladies have time to exhibit." Mary! You can't sing! Get down! Put the mic down, Mary! Put the mic down! Mary, though pretending not to hear, was somewhat disconcerted, and Elizabeth, sorry for her, and sorry for her father's speech, was afraid her anxiety had done no good. Others of the party were now applied to. "If I," said Mr. Collins, "were so fortunate as to be able to sing, I should have great pleasure, I am sure, in obliging the company with an affair, for I consider music as a very innocent diversion, and perfectly compatible with the profession of a clergyman. I do not mean, however, to assert that we can be justified in devoting too much of our time to music, for there are certainly other things to attend to. The rector of a parish has much to do." Mr. Collins always has a fucking speech prepared, doesn't he? God damn. Better drop some bars. Oh, heck yeah. Better drop some bars and a subscription. Thank you, Brescia, for being my first Twitch subscription. Yay! Thank you so much. Appreciate it. There's a couple of emotes. Enjoy them. Yeah. But he always has a bloody speech. He always does. "In the first place, he must make such an agreement for 30s as may be beneficial to himself." You are the first, the very first. I've had some bits with you, the first subscription. You really are. Well done. Beneficial to himself and not offensive to his patron. Ah, yay, headbutt, thank you. Yay. Hello, DePaul. Welcome. He must write his own sermons, and the time that remains will not be too much for his parish duties, and the care and improvement of his dwellings, which he cannot be excused from making as comfortable as possible. And I do not think it of light importance that he should have attentive and conciliatory manners towards everybody, especially towards those of whom he owes his preferment. I cannot acquit him of that duty, nor could I think well of the man who should omit an occasion of testifying his respect towards anybody connected with the family. I see, Mr. Collins. You're sucking up to Darcy again. Yeah, I'm not going to be subscribing to anyone anymore since Twitch raised the prices. I'm petty. That's fine, DePaulo. Don't you worry. You stick to your guns. I respect it. With a bow to Mr. Darcy, he concluded his speech, which had been spoken so loud as to be heard by half the room. Many stared, many smiled, but no one looked more amused than Mr. Bennet himself, while his wife seriously commended Mr. Collins for having spoken so sensibly, and observed in a half-whisper to Lady Lucas that he was a remarkably clever, good kind of a young man. To Elizabeth it appeared that had her family made an agreement to expose themselves as much as they could during the evening, it would have been impossible for them to play their parts with more spirit or finer success. And happy did she think it for Bingley and her sister that some of the expedition had escaped his notice, and that his feelings were not of a sort to be much distressed by the folly which he must have witnessed. That his two sisters and Mr. Darcy, however, should have such an opportunity of ridiculing her relations was bad enough, and she could not determine whether the silent contempt of the gentlemen or the insolent smile of the ladies were more intolerable. So basically, the whole family is doing embarrassing shit, and Elizabeth wants to go bury herself in a hole. Mood. Stick to Mr. Wickham. The rest of the evening brought her little amusement. She was teased by Mr. Collins, who continued most perversingly by her side, and though he could not prevail with her to dance with him again, but it out of her power to dance with others, in vain did she entreat him to stand up with somebody else, and offered to introduce him to any young lady in the room. He assured her that, as to dancing, he was perfectly indifferent to it, that his chief object was, by delicate attentions, to recommend himself to her, and that he should, therefore, make a point of remaining close to her the whole evening. And she's like, oh, please go away, please go away, please go away, please go away, please go away. There was no arguing upon such a project. She owed her greatest relief to her friend Miss Lucas, who often joined them and good-naturedly engaged Mr. Collins's conversation to herself. She was at least free from the offence of Mr. Darcy's further notice, though often standing within a very short distance of her, quite disengaged. He never came near enough to speak. She felt it to be the probable consequences of her allusions to Mr. Wickham, and rejoiced in it. Did I make him jealous? Maybe. The Longbourn party were at last of all the company to depart, and by a manoeuvre of Mrs. Bennet had to wait for their carriage a quarter of an hour after everybody else was gone. Oh my! Our carriage is late! Mum! Mum! She's at it again! Which gave them time to see how heartily they were wished away by some of their family. Mrs. Hurst and her sisters scarcely opened their mouths, except to complain of fatigue, and were evidently impatient to have the house to themselves. They repulsed every attempt of Mrs. Bennet at conversation, and, by doing so, threw a languid over the whole party, which was very little relieved by the long speeches of Mr. Collins, who was complimenting Mr. Bingley and his sisters on the elegance of their entertainment and the hospitality and politeness which had marked their behaviour to their guests. Darcy said nothing at all. Mr. Bennet, in equal silence, was enjoying the scene. Mr. Bennet and Jane were standing together, a little detached from the rest, and talked only to each other. Elizabeth preserved as steady a silence as either Mrs. Hurst or Miss Bingley, and even Lydia was too much fatigued to utter more than the occasional exclamation of, "Lord, how tired I am!" accompanied by a violent yawn. It's what the kids call giving the ick. Yes, Collins definitely gives the ick. When at length they arose to take leave, Mrs. Bennet was most pressingly civil in her hope of seeing the whole family soon at Longbourn, and addressed herself particularly to Mr. Bingley, to assure him how happy he would make them by eating a family dinner with them at any time, without the ceremony of a formal invitation. "You gotta go, bow, Lucas?" "That's fair. You have a lovely time. Goodbye. I hope you had fun Animal Crossing. Bye-bye." Mrs. Bennet was perfectly satisfied, and quitted the house under the delightful persuasion that, allowing for the necessary preparations of settlements, new carriages and wedding clothes, she could undoubtedly see her daughter settle at Netherfield in the course of 3 or 4 months, or of having another daughter married to Mr. Collins, she thought with equal certainty was considerable, though not equal pleasure. Elizabeth was the least dear to her of all her children, and though the man and the match were quite good enough for her, the worth of each was eclipsed by Mr. Bingley and Netherfield. Mum's just like, okay, one's going to Mr. Bingley, one's going to Collins, though I don't like Elizabeth quite that much. So I don't really mind that she goes to Mr. Collins. Mum, goddamn. Yeah, I know that quitted seems weird, but this was a different time. I love the difference in language. It's kind of the funnest thing about reading old books. It's why I like pausing for a moment and seeing if I can like translate it into modern slang. Oh, look at them. To assure you in the most animated language. We're on chapter 19, is that? Yeah, I know Roman numerals. There's a lot of chapters in this book. Well, yeah, like I said, 31% of the way through this book. We ain't that far. When I studied linguistics at uni, I realized that language is anarchy. Yes, it is! It changes every day. Every single day. In every language. Just be changing, doing things. You're gonna lurk, Luke. No, you're cool. And have a lovely lurk. Have a lovely chill evening. Thank you for coming. I'm always glad you stopped by too. The next day opened a new scene at Longbourn. Mr. Collins made his declaration in form, having resolved to do it without loss of time, and his leave of absence extended only to the following Saturday, and having no feelings of difference to make it distressing to himself, even at the moment, he set about it in a very orderly manner, with all observances which he supposed a regular part of the business. On finding Mrs. Bennet, Elizabeth, and one of the younger girls together soon after breakfast, he addressed the mother in these words. Back when written Slovak languages were established, there was no Y? Really? Oh, that's wild. I like that. So that explains some really weird translations that we likely have nowadays. May I hope, madame, for your interest with your fair daughter Elizabeth, when I solicit the honour of a private audience with her in the course of this morning? Before Elizabeth had time for anything but a blush of surprise, Mrs. Bennet instantly answered, "Oh dear, certainly, yes. I am sure Lizzie will be very happy. I am sure she can have no objection. Come, Kitty, I want you upstairs." And gathering her work together, she was hastening away, when Elizabeth called out, "Dear ma'am, don't go. I beg you will not go. Mr. Collins must excuse me. He can have nothing to say to me that anybody else, not here. I am not going away myself." No, nonsense, Lizzie. I desire that you stay where you are." And upon Elizabeth seeming really with vexed and embarrassed looks about to escape, she added, "Lizzie, I insist upon you stay." And hearing Mr. Collins. "Lizzie, I know you don't want to marry this man, but I want you to marry this man. Stay here." Goddamn. Just think, 10 years ago, the phrase skibbity toilet was meaningless. Now Michael Bay is making a movie. To be fair, Slovak is way too complicated a language considering how few people speak it. Impressive. Elizabeth could not oppose such an injunction. Oh my god, why is my phone so loud? Go away, phone. Elizabeth could not oppose such an injunction, and a moment's consideration making her also sensible that it would be wisest to get it over as soon and as quietly as possible. She sat down again and tried to conceal by incessant employment The feelings which were divided between distress and diversion. Sits down, is just like, oh, please kill me now. Aggressive Victorian mum shipping, yes. Mrs. Bennet and Kitty walked off, and as soon as they were gone, Mr. Collins began with yet another fucking massive speech. God damn it, Mr. Collins. Learn to have smaller speech bubbles. Look at this. Look at this. This is all Mr. Collins. All Mr. Collins. My God, Mr. Collins, please. Mr. Collins, please. Believe me, my dear Elizabeth, that your modesty, so far from doing you any disservice, rather adds to your other perfections. You would not have been less amiable in my eyes, had there not been this little unwillingness. But allow me to assure you that I have your respected mother's permission for this audience. You can hardly doubt the purport of my discourse. However, your natural delicacy may lead you to dissemble. My actions have been too marked to be mistaken. Almost as soon as I entered the house, I singled you out as the companion of my future life. But before I am run away with my feelings on this subject, perhaps it will be advisable for me to state my reasons for marrying, and moreover for coming into Hertfordshire with the design of selecting a wife, as I certainly did. The idea of Mr. Collins, with all his solemn composure, being run away with his feelings, made Elizabeth so near laughing that she could not use the short pause he allowed in any attempt to stop him farther, as he continued all the way down here and into the next page. Mr. Collins, please. My reasons for marrying. First, that I think it a right thing for every clergyman in easy circumstances like myself to set the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, that I am convinced that it will add very greatly to my happiness. And thirdly, which perhaps I ought to have mentioned earlier, that it is the particular advice and recommendation of the very noble lady whom I have the honour of calling my patroness. Twice has she condensed me to give me her opinion, unasked too, on this subject, and it was but the very Saturday night before I left Hunsford, between our pools at quadrille, while Mrs. Jenkins was arranging Mr. Burroughs' footstool, that she said, Mr. Collins, you must marry. A clergyman like you must marry. Choose properly. Choose a gentlewoman for my sake, and for your own. Let her be active, useful sort of person, not brought up high, but able to make a small income go a good way. This is my advice. Find such a woman as soon as you can. Bring her to Hunsford, and I will visit her. Allow me, by the way, to observe, my fair cousin, that I do not reckon the notice and kindness of Lady Catherine de Bourgh as among the least of the advantages in my power to offer. You will find her manners beyond anything I can describe, and your wit and vivacity, I think, must be acceptable to her, especially when tempered with the silence and respect which her rank will inevitably incite. Thus much. Wait. I need to read that again. You will find her manners beyond anything you describe, and your wit and vivacity, I think, will be acceptable to her, maybe, especially when tempered with the silence and respect which her rank will inevitably incite. Basically, I know you're a sassy-ass bitch, but can you be a sassy-ass bitch in front of my girl-bossing patron? That's what that feels like. These two things don't make sense, and it's hilarious. Your wit and vivacity, your sassiness, and then will be tempered with the silence and respect which her rank will inevitably. Does he know who he's talking to? Silence and respect? You are talking to Elizabeth Bennet, my friend. That is not what you're getting. Thus, much for my general intention in favour of matrimony, it remains to be told why my views were directed to Longbourn instead of my own neighbourhood, where I assure you there are many amiable young women. But the fact is that, being, as I am, to inherit this estate after the death of your honoured father, who, however, may live many years longer, I could not satisfy myself without resolving to choose a wife from among his daughters, that the loss to them might be as little as possible when the melancholy event takes place, which, however, as I have already said, may not be for several years. This has been my motive, my fair cousin, and I flatter myself it will not sink me in your esteem. And now nothing remains of me but to assure you in the most animated language of the violence of my affection. Of the violence of my affection. God, you could not use that as a line now, could you? God damn. The violence of my affection. Terrible. You better silence and learn to respect these hands, dear Elizabeth. Otherwise he'll use the violence of his affection for her. Good Lord. Good Lord, Mr. Collins. Good Lord. Violence. To fortune I am perfectly indifferent, and shall make no demand of that nature on your father, since I am well aware that it could not be complied within, and that £1,000 in the 4%, which will not be yours until after your mother's decease, is all that you may ever be entitled to. On that head, therefore, I shall be uniformly silent, and you may assure yourself that no ungenerous reproach shall ever pass my lips when we are married. It was absolutely necessary to interrupt him now. Yes, it was. You are too hasty, sir, she cried. You forget that I have made no answer. Let me do it without further loss of time. Accept my thanks for the compliment you are paying me. I am very sensible of the honour of your proposal, but it is impossible for me to do otherwise than to decline them. I am not now to learn, replied Collins with a formal wave of his hand, that it is unusual with young ladies to reject the address of the man whom they secretly mean to accept. Oh no, Mr. Collins! No means no, Mr. Collins! No means no! When he first applies for their favour, and that sometimes the refusal is repeated a second or even a third time. I am, therefore, by no means discouraged by what you have just said, and shall hope to lead you to the altar ere long. Fuck off, Mr. Collins! Mr. Collins, no! Upon my word, sir, cried Elizabeth, your hope is a rather extraordinary one after my declaration. I do assure you that I am not one of those young ladies, if such young ladies are there, who are so daring as to risk their happiness on the chance of being asked a second time. I am perfectly serious in my refusal. You could not make me happy, and I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world who would make you so. Nay, were your friend Lady Catherine to know me, I am persuaded that she would find me in every respect ill qualified for the situation. Is the 1800s no means I don't care, I'm going in anyway. Mr. Collins seems to be asking for the right hook. Oh, if only Elizabeth would. I want Elizabeth to throw hands. But I guess that's why you need the zombie version of this. I would low-key, I'm going to go track down Pride and Prejudice with zombies after we finish this, because I'm going to have such a different, perspective on it after this. Were it certain that Lady Elizabeth would think so, said Mr. Collins very gravely, but I cannot imagine that her ladyship would at all disapprove of you, and you may be certain that when I have the honour of seeing her again, I shall speak in the highest terms of your modesty, economy, and rather amiable qualifications. Indeed, Mr. Collins, all the praise of me will be unnecessary. You must give me leave to judge for myself, and pay me the compliment of believing what I say. I wish you very happy and very rich, and by refusing your hand, do in all my power to prevent your being otherwise. In making me the offer, you must have satisfied the delicacy of your feelings with regard to my family, and may take possession of Longbourn estate whenever it falls, without any self-reproach. This matter may be considered, therefore, as finally settled. And rising, as she thus spoke, she could have quitted the room, had not Mr. Collins thus addressed her. Mr. Collins seemed to be asking for the right word. Low-key. Low-key. When I do myself the honour of speaking to you on the subject, I shall hope to receive a more favourable answer than that you have now given me, though I am far from accusing you of cruelty at present, because I know it to be the established custom of your sex to reject a man on first application. No, it's not, dickhead! No means no! And perhaps you have even now said as much to encourage my suit as would be considered the true delicacy of the female character. Throw hands, Elizabeth. Punch him, please, please. Elizabeth, you have hands. Do you know what these hands are for? Punching. Punching Mr. Collins. Really, Mr. Collins, Elizabeth cried with some warmth, you puzzle me exceedingly. If what I have hitherto said can appear to you in the form of encouragement, I know not how to express my refusal in such a way as may convince you of its being one. My favourite part of Pride said, it's prejudicing time, and then prejudice all over the place. You must give me leave to flatter myself, my dear cousin, that your refusal of my address are merely words of course. My reason for believing it are briefly these. It does not appear to me that my hand is unworthy of your acceptance, or that the establishment I can offer would be any other than highly desirable. You have to be lying, because I have things you would want. Not because you would dislike me, obviously. My situation in life, my connections with the family of de Burgh, and my relationship to your own, are circumstances highly in favour, and you should take into further consideration that, in spite of your manifold attractions, it is by no means certain that another offer of marriage may ever be made to you. Jesus! Mr. Collins! Oh, you're really refusing completely? Well, I might be the only marriage you ever get, bitch. Damn! Your portion is unhappily so small that it will, in all likelihood, undo the effects of your loveliness. And you might be beautiful, bitch, but you're poor. And other amiable qualities. As I must therefore conclude that you are not serious in your rejection of me, I shall choose to attribute it to your wish of increasing my love by suspense, according to the usual practice of elegant females. Fuck off, Mr. Collins. Oh, Mr. Collins, if only I had tea to spill in your face right now. Hot, molten tea! I do assure you, sir, that I have no pretensions whatsoever of that kind of elegance, which consists in tormenting respectable men. I would rather be paid the compliment of being believed sincere. I thank you again and again for the honour you have done me in your proposals, but to accept them is absolutely impossible. My feelings in every respect forbid it. Can I speak plainer? Do not consider me now as an elegant female intending to plague you, but as a rational creature speaking the truth from her heart. This. So, this modern, some modern men need to learn this also. Good lord. I need to, save that in my life so that... But then that would just confuse people if I said that in the modern day. But it's so real. How do you like your tea? Scalding and by the quart, thank you. Yes. You are uniformly charming, he cried with an air of awkward gallantry. I am persuaded that, when sanctioned by the express authority of both your excellent parents, my proposal will not fail of being acceptable. He's like, ha-ha! I don't care if you say no. I'm gonna get your parents to make you do it. Fuck off. He is so sleazy. This is awful. To such perseverance in willful self-deception, Elizabeth could make no reply, and immediately, in silence, withdrew, determined that, if he persisted in considering her repeated refusals as flattering encouragement to apply to her father, those negative might be uttered in such a manner as must be decisive, and whose behaviour, at least, could not be mistaken for the affection and courtesy of an elegant female. Good lord, that was a chapter. Holy shit, Mr. Collins. I knew I didn't like you, but now I really don't like you. Now you're on my shit list, my friend. No means no, Mr. Collins. No means no. Oh, is this Mr. Collins going to Mum? Yeah, it's Mr. Collins going to Mum. Oh, Mother, your daughter is not being very amicable for marriage. When first impressions are totally right. Yes, Mr. Collins is a fucking dumbass. He's just... loves the smell of his own farts kind of person. It's the worst. Mr. Collins should be sent to the ranch. Yes, he should. Mr. Collins was not left long to the silent contemplations of his successful love, for Mrs. Bennet, having dawdled about the vestibule and watched for the end of the conference, no sooner saw Elizabeth open the door with a quick step and pass her towards the staircase than she entered the breakfast room and congratulated both him and herself in warmest terms on the happy prospect of their near connection. Mother! Mother! And then Mother just walks down and goes, congrats on your marriage! Mum! I might be the only one you can get would work on me, mainly because it's probably true. Ah, the polar wolf! Silly Billy. Keep your standards. Keep your standards. Mr. Collins received the returned the felicitations with equal pleasure, and then proceeded to relate the particulars of the interview, with the result of which he trusted he had every reason to be satisfied, since the refusal which his cousin had steadfast given him would naturally flow from her bashful modesty and the genuine delicacy of her character. This information, however, startled Mrs. Bennet. She would have been glad to be equally satisfied that her daughter had meant to encourage him by protesting against his proposals, but she dared not believe it, and could not help in saying so. Yeah, and then when Mum hears that, she's like, no, I know Elizabeth. I know my daughter. She meant no. I'm sorry, Mr. Collins, but she meant no. But it depends on it, Mr. Collins, she added, that Lizzie shall be brought to reason. I shall speak with her about it myself directly. She is a very headstrong, foolish girl, and does not know her own interest. But I will make her know it. Mum! Mum! Calm down, Mum. Mum, calm down. I keep my standards in the basement. No! Get them up! Get them out of the basement! At least put them on ground level. God damn it. Pardon me for interrupting you, madam, cried Mr. Collins, but if she is really headstrong and foolish, I know not whether she would altogether be a very desirable wife to a man in my situation, who naturally looks for happiness in the marriage state. If, therefore, she actually persists in rejecting my suit, perhaps it were better not to force her into accepting me, because if liable to such defects of temper, she could not contribute much to my felicity. They belong at the base of... No, what is standards? Standards are things you should have. If you are going to have a relationship, you need to learn to at least, be nice to yourself, because you can't expect another person to be nice to you if you don't know how to be nice to yourself. I haven't finished digging the standards hole in the backyard, so, no! Get them out of the basement! Stop digging the hole! Stop it! You all deserve lovely partners, so you need to get your fucking standards out of the fucking ground, okay? Relationship, what is that? God, you fucking nerds, a lot of you. Absolutely nerders with the lonely nerding in the basement. For now. Dig deep enough and you might find me. God damn it, guys. Oh, you get out the basement. Get out. Sorry. You standards went scuba diving. Now! Go scuba diving and find them and bring them back up above sea level, please. Above sea level. You're terrible. You're terrible. Oh, hi, Tella! And Tella's party of two. Welcome. I'm surprised at this, that Mr. Collins is like, maybe we shouldn't force her. And also being like, oh, well, maybe if she is like you think she is, which she is, then maybe I don't like her. Well, was this the Marina Trench? I am no nerd, man. Nerds are smarter. I thought geeks were the smart ones, and nerds are just like D&D and comic books and, maybe not smart, but into nerdy things. I thought geek was the smart one. Or have I got it the other way around? Sir, you quite understand me, said Mrs. Bennet, alarmed. Lizzie is only headstrong in such matters as these. In everything else, she is as good-natured a girl as ever lived. I will go directly to Mr. Bennet, and we shall very soon settle it with her, I am sure. You were reading cringy fanfics. I did pop in for a hot sec. It was just while I was setting up a stream, so I didn't have long to talk or anything, but I did hear something about Hu Tao and her wonderful body or something like that, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Oh, whoa, I got raided. Yes, it happens, Void, sometimes. Tella has been wonderful at raiding me every so often. We appreciate this. The Hu Tao on, yes! I caught a little bit of the Hu Tao on, and I was like, what the fuck? Nah, the geeks are the ones who live in the carnival and bite the heads off chickens. Nightmare Alley taught me that. Okay, that makes sense. What are you when you're like a nerd, but you're not smart? Like I said, I thought nerds weren't smart. I thought nerds had a reputation for being smart, but weren't always smart. Community voted. Your community voted you to read something very strange. Who what now? Hu Tao now? Nerd but not smart is a dork. Oh, okay, you're all dorks then. That makes sense. Teller is German for dinner plate. Oh Lord, Teller, you're tasty. Alright, dorks. You're all dorks now. All of you with your standards below sea level, you're all dorks. Silly, silly dorks. She would not give him time to reply, but hurrying instantly to her husband, called out as she entered the library, "Oh, Mr. Bennet, you are wanted immediately. We are all in an uproar. You must come and make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins, for she vows she will not have him. And if you do not make haste, he will change his mind and not have her. Oh my gosh!" Nobody's told me I'm tasty in quite a long time, but I'll take it. Not tasty, the plate. Porcelain, Brownie. Porcelain! Have you not eaten porcelain before? Are you not supposed to eat the plate? Can confirm we are all dorks and chat reflects the streamer. Shut up, Jake. Sorry, my standards believe in the hollow earth theory and went exploring. You know, that's an interesting idea for an old costume. Yes, you could be a plate! The Germans will love it! Your standards are hanging out with Aaron X in the car. God damn it, guys. Oh, Void! Thank you for the sub! I appreciate it! Yay! 2 subs, 2 subs, 2 subs, 2 subs. Heck yeah. Prime subs, bro. Mr. Bennet raised his eyes. I got a hype train? Oh yeah, cause then I got bits from Teller. Holy shit. Choo choo on the hype train. Chugga chugga chugga. 183 bits from Teller. Thank you, Teller. Aw, you sweetie. Yes, sweetie. Sweetie. There's a hype train. What does that do? Yeah, Void, you are my first Prime guy. You're the first one with the Prime. To drop the Prime. And what does a hype train do? Noble size Phantom with 100 bits. Oh my gosh. That hype train going chugga 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 choo choo. And what does a hype train do? Someone explain to me this hype train thing. I have one going. I don't know what it does. Down is relative. My standards are hanging out in the first dimension. Guys, get your standards up. Put them in the sky. Put them in heaven. Anyway. I've been in a few hype trains. I still have no idea. Yeah! It sounds fun though, at least, doesn't it? Choo choo. If you add a theme song, the hype train, it'll be much more fun. Let's get Bryony to level 10! That'd be crazy. What am I on now? I need to look. I need to see it on the screen. Choo choo, chaka choo. It's only on level 1 right now. Only on level 1. Sorry, but my standards are heavy. So they collapse under their own weight and tore a hole through the fabric of space and time! If that's the case, they could be really high right now because you have no idea where they ended up. If people sub-gift or bit, the level increases. It tracks your record. That's it. It doesn't do anything but encourage people to give mans. I enjoy how high my standards are in comparison to this chat. Honestly, if you just have your standard at ground level, then you've beaten most of my chat in standards, apparently. I don't know what that says about me. If their standards are so low. Does that mean... Is your standards for streamers as low as your standards for relationships? Because if that's the case, I really don't know what to feel about my stuff anymore. Normal size Phantom gave out a community gift sub. That's lovely. Can confirm again. Oh no! Although we finished a level and then the hype train ends, all contributors and the streamer get emote. Oh, that's nice. With hype trains, you can challenge your chat to get to higher levels, so you can do embarrassing things on the stream. Let's get Bryony up to level 100 so she can dress as a hedgehog on stream, then go to McDonald's. I can't go to Mackey's right now. My standards are for my streamers. My standards for my streamers are much lower. Your standards for your streamers are way higher. That makes me feel a little bit better. Just a little bit better. Just a little. That's exciting. I had a hype train going. That was cool. Very exciting. Anyway, should we get back to the book? Where were we? Oh yeah, she was trying to get Dad to gang up on Lizzie so that she'll marry Mr. Collins. Mr. Bennet raised an eyebrow from his book as she entered, and fixed them on her face with a calm unconcern, which was not the least altered by her communication. "I have not the pleasure of understanding you," said he when she had finished her speech. "Of what are you talking about?" "Of Mr. Collins and Lizzie, sir. And Lizzie. Lizzie declares that she will not have Mr. Collins, and Mr. Collins begins to say that he will not have Lizzie. And what am I to do on the occasion? It seems a hopeless business." "Speak to Lizzie about it yourself. Tell her that you insist upon her marrying him. Let her be called down. I shall hear her. She shall hear my opinion." Mrs. Bennet rang the bell, and Miss Elizabeth was summoned to the library. "Come here, child," cried her father as she appeared. "I have sent for you upon an affair of importance. I understand that Mr. Collins has made you an offer of marriage. Is it true?" Elizabeth replied that it was. "Very well, and this offer of marriage you have refused?" "I have, sir." "Very well. We have come to this point. Your mother insists upon you accepting it. Is it not so, Mrs. Bennet?" "Yes, or I will never see her again." "An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do." Dad! Dad's better. Dad's a shithead, but, you know. Hype train level 1, 80%. Your community contributed 2 gift subs and 283 bits. Heck yeah, guys. Well done. Well done. That was good times. My standards for streamers. My standards are currently a conga line dancing in hell with the devil. The line for streamers is about where the line for people of don't even try, those are way too good. I don't have very high standards for streamers, just be entertaining and don't insult me. That's a pretty good standard, honestly. What more do you need? The fact that Donald Sutherland plays Mr. Bennet in the movie makes this perfect. I mean, they're just looking out for her well-being, though they really need to get on the same page about it. I do have that sound effect somewhere, but I haven't used it in a long time. I don't know if it's working. Should we try it? Where's the button? There's the button! Hey, it worked! Nice! What would you do if you got Hype Train 50? Half of a house down payment for I have no idea. Like, what would be worth that? I have trouble thinking about, like, what I do for any kind of, like, big event. I don't know, like, what is worthy of it? If Brownie gets to Hype Train level 100, she has to complete Ruin It without help! Oh my god! Why would you do that to me, Brescia? Why? 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 Why would you do that? Ooh, rose colour. Yay! Thanks for the gift sub. I was waiting to thank you, but it never showed up. You can thank Normal Size Phantom for that. He's a good one. Never promised to read fan fiction. Unfortunately, I already did that, and it was my own fan fiction, so it was double the embarrassment. Really, I did that for 1,000 subs on YouTube, and you should get a soundboard. It's very fun. Always promised to read fan fiction. Always. Elizabeth could not but smile at such a conclusion of such a beginning, but Mrs. Bennet, who had persuaded herself that her husband regarded the affair as she wished, was excessively disappointed. "What do you mean, Mr. Bennet, by taking in this way? You promised me to insist upon her marrying him." "My dear," replied her husband, "I have 2 small favours to request. First, that you will allow me the free use of my understanding on this precedent occasion, and secondly, of my room. I shall be glad to have the library to myself as soon as may be." Dad doesn't give a shit. Runa without help? That sounds so boring. 50 grand. Brownie eats ghost pepper. I'd do that. I'd do that. I would hate it. I would cry. But you know what? I could do spicy stuff. We could do a spicy stream. Not that kind of spicy stream. Not that kind of spicy stream. But you know what I mean. A flavor spicy stream. We know where Liz gets it. We do. Not yet, however, in spite of her disappointment in her husband, did Mrs. Bennet give up on the point. She talked to Elizabeth again and again, coaxed and threatened her by turns. She endeavoured to secure Jane in her interests, but Jane, with all possible mildness, declined interfering, and Elizabeth, sometimes with real earnestness and sometimes with playful gaiety, replied to her attacks. Though her manner varied, however, her determination never did. Mr. Collins, meanwhile, was meditating in solitude on what had passed. He thought too well of himself to comprehend on what motives his cousin could refuse him, and though his pride was hurt, he suffered in no way. His regard for her was quite imaginary, and the possibility of her deserving her mother's reproach prevented his feeling any regret. Prevented him feeling any regret. While the family were in this confusion, Charlotte Lucas came to spend the day with them. She was met in the vestibule by Lydia, who, flying to her, cried in a half whisper, "I am glad you are to come, for there is such fun here. What do you think has happened this morning? Mr. Collins has made an offer to Lizzie, and she will not have him." I think Charlotte Lucas is going to have him. He's going to end up marrying Charlotte Lucas instead. That's my guess. Didn't even think of that. Time for my catchphrase. Don't make it weird, chat. Chat will always make it weird. You have to, curb them off before they can. Doesn't matter. Spicy is always fun in one way or another. You're not wrong. You can tell me what to do. I'm not afraid of Germans. We win those fights. Bryony told us not to eat the chibi, and where did that end up? Be sure to take precautions in case the ghost pepper takes your ability to breathe away. In case we got a millionaire hiding in chat. Ghost peppers are spicy enough to do that. They are. I'd probably only eat a little bit, not the full ass thing, I don't know. Have some my other half there ready for the Heimlich maneuver when necessary. What do you mean? We'll make it weird. You're the one that made it weird. I didn't make it weird. I just made sure we were all on the same page, Sometimes you gotta make it. To be fair, you haven't eaten the chibi yet. And you will not. You will never eat the chibi. No eating chibis. Chibis are bad for you. I've told you this many times. They entered the breakfast room. Look at them. Entering smugly. Charlotte had hardly any time to answer before they were joined by Kitty, who came to tell them the same news. And no sooner had they entered the breakfast room, where Mrs. Bennet was alone, than she likewise began on the subject, calling on Miss Lucas before her comparison, and entreating her to persuade her friend Lizzie to comply with the wishes of her family. Pray do, my dear Miss Lucas," she added in a melancholy tone, "for nobody is on my side. Nobody takes part with me. I am cruelly used. Nobody feels for my poor nerves. My daughter won't marry. Woe is me." God damn. Every time Bryony misspeaks. What, chat? Don't make it weird. Chat, we didn't say anything. No, it was you guys. It was always you guys. What are you on about? I can always blame you. Even if there is a specific text chat, you could definitely check every stream to make sure whether it was me or you guys. It's always still definitely you. You gotta make it weird first. That way you retain control of the situation. That is a good way to do it, DePolo. It's a good way to do it. Charlotte's reply was spared by the entrance of Jane and Elizabeth. "Aye, there she comes," continued Mrs. Bennet, looking as unconcerned as may be, and caring no more for us than if we were at York, provided she can have her own way. But I tell you what, Miss Lizzie, if you take it into your head to go on refusing every offer of marriage in this way, you will never get a husband at all. And I am sure I do not know who is to maintain you when your father is dead. I shall not be able to keep you, and so I warn you. I have done with you from this very day. I told you in the library, you know, that I shall never speak to you again, and you will find me as good as my word. I have no pleasure in talking to undutiful children. Not that I have much pleasure indeed in talking to anybody. People who suffer as I do from nervous complaints can have no great inclination for talking. Nobody can tell what I suffer, but it is always so. Those who do not complain are never pitied. So, I have anxiety, she says. I have social anxiety, Elizabeth. And you're still doing this. God damn it, Mum. Mum, calm the fuck down. I have so much empathy for Mrs. Bennet. The only thing that lives on is one's family, legacy and family. You can't gaslight me, I'm the one that gaslights. But Bryony, what if you were doing something unaware that it's sus until someone in chat points it out, you or the fictional character? Then it's definitely chat's fault for making it weird. If I hadn't clicked that it's weird, then it's chat's fault for making it weird, even if it was weird to begin with. Her daughters listened in silence to this effusion, sensible that any attempt to reason with or soothe her would only increase the irritation. She talked on, therefore, without interruption from any of them, till they were joined by Mr. Collins, who entered with an air more stately than usual, and on perceiving whom, she said to the girls, Now I do insist upon it that you, all of you, hold your tongues and let Mr. Collins have a little conversation. Let me and Mr. Collins have a little conversation together." Elizabeth passed quietly out of the room. Jane and Kitty followed. But Lydia stood her ground, determined to hear all she could, and Charlotte, detained first by civility of Mr. Collins, those inquiries after herself and all her family were very minute, and then by a little curiosity satisfied herself with walking to the window and pretending not to hear. In a doleful voice, Mrs. Bennet thus began to project the conversation. "Oh, Mr. Collins!" "My dear madam," replied he, "let us be for ever silent on this point. Far be it from me, he presently continued in a voice that marked his displeasure, to resent the behaviour of your daughter. Resignation to inevitable evils is the duty of us all. The peculiar duty of a young man who has been so fortunate as I have been, in early preferment, and I trust I am resigned. Perhaps not the less so from feeling a doubt of my positive happiness, had my fair cousin honoured me with her hand. For I have often observed that resignation is never so perfect as when the blessing denies being to lose somewhat of its value in our estimation. You will not, I hope, consider me as showing any disrespect to your family, my dear madam, by thus withdrawing my presentations of your daughter's favour, without having paid yourself and Mr. Bennet the compliment of requesting you to interpose your authority in my behalf. My conduct, I fear, be objectable in having accept my dismission from your daughter's lips instead of your own, but we are all liable to error. I have certainly meant well through the whole affair. My object has been to secure an amiable companion for myself, and with due consideration for the advantage of all your family. And if my manner has been at all reprehensible, I here beg leave to apologize. So is that him saying, I'm sorry I went to your daughter to ask for her hand in marriage. Why didn't I just go to her parents? She has no say in this. God damn, Mr. Collins. God damn. The discussion of Mr. Collins's offer was now nearly at an end, and Elizabeth had only to suffer from the uncomfortable feelings necessary attending to it, and occasionally from some peevish allusion of her mother. As for the gentleman himself, his feelings were chiefly expressed, not by embarrassment or dejection, nor by trying to avoid her, but by stiffness of manner and resentful silence. He scarcely ever spoke to her, and the assiduous attentions which he had been so sensible of himself were transferred for the rest of the day to Miss Lucas, whose civility in listening to him was a sensible relief to them all, and especially to her friend. Oh, a second. I think I need to blow my nose. The morrow produced no abatement of Mrs. Bennet's ill humour or ill health. Mr. Collins was also in the same state of angry pride. Elizabeth had hoped his resentment might shorten his visit, but his plan did not appear in the least affected by it. He was always meant to have gone on Saturday, and to Saturday he still meant to stay. I kind of hate how in old times the parents got to choose who their kids get to marry, because that makes it easier than it is today, and kinda unbefitting for both sides. After breakfast, the girls walked to Meryton, to inquire if Mr. Wickham were returned, and to lament over his absence from the Netherfield ball. He joined them on their entering town, and attended them to their aunt's, where his regret and vexation, and the concern of everybody, were well talked over. To Elizabeth, however, he voluntarily acknowledged that the necessity of his absence had been self-imposed. I found, he said, as the time drew near, that I had better not meet Mr. Darcy, that to be in the same room, the same party with him for so many hours together, might be more than I could bear, and that scenes might arise unpleasant to more than myself. She highly approved his forbearance, and they had leisure for a full discussion of it, and for all the commendations which they civility bestowed on each other, as Wickham and another officer walked back with them to Longbourn, and the duration of the walk he particularly attended to her. His accompanying them was a double advantage. She felt all the compliment it offered her to herself, and it was most acceptable as an occasion of introducing him to her father and mother. And this is why Elizabeth had to say no, because she's like, hello, mother, father, this is the man I would like to be my future husband. Can I marry him instead? Please, 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 please. Soon after their return, a letter was delivered to Miss Bennet. It came from Netherfield. It was opened immediately. The envelope contained a sheet of elegant little hot-pressed paper, well covered with a lady's fair flowing hand. And Elizabeth saw her sister's countenance change when she read it, and saw her dwelling intently on some of the particular passages. Jane recollected herself soon, and putting the letter away, tried to join with her usual cheerfulness in the general conversation, but Elizabeth felt an anxiety on the subject which drew off her attention, even from Wickham. And no sooner had he and his companions taken leave than a glance from Jane invited her to follow her upstairs. When they had gained their own room, Jane talked about the letter and said, "This is from Caroline Bingley. What it contains has surprised me a good deal. The whole party have left Netherfield by this time, and are on their way to town, and without any intention of coming back again. You shall hear what— Oh no! You shall hear what it says." She then read the first sentence out loud, which comprised of the information of their having just resolved to follow their brother to town directly, and of their meaning to dine that day in Grosvenor Street, where Mr. Hurst had a house. The next was these words: "I do not pretend to regret anything I shall leave in Hertfordshire except your society, my dearest friend. But we will hope at some future period to enjoy many returns of that delightful intercourse we have known, and in the meantime, in the meanwhile, may lessen the pain of separation by a frequent and most unreserved correspondence. I depend on you for that." To these high-flown expressions Elizabeth listened with all the insensibility of distrust, and though the suddenness of their removal surprised her, she saw nothing in it really to lament. It was not to be supposed that their absence from Netherfield would prevent Mr. Bingley being there, and as to the loss of their society, she was persuaded that Jane must soon cease to regard it in the enjoyment of his. "It is unlucky," said she, after a short pause, "that you should not be able to see your friend before they leave, but may we not hope that the period of future happiness to which Miss Bingley looks forward may arrive earlier than she is aware, and that the delightful intercourse you have known as friends will be renewed with yet greater satisfactory as sisters? Mr. Bingley will not be detained in London by then. Caroline decidedly says that none of the party will return to Hertfordshire this winter. I will read it to you. Netherfield is what I call the area under my bed. When my brother left us yesterday, he imagined that the business which took him to London might be concluded in 3 or 4 days, but as we are certain it cannot be, and at the same time convinced that when Charles gets to town he will be in no hurry to leave it again, We have determined on following him hither, that he may be obliged to spend his vacant hours in the comfortless hotel. Many of my acquaintance are already there for the winter. I wish I could hear that you, that you, my dearest friend, had any intention of making one in the crowd, but of that I despair. I sincerely hope your Christmas in Hertfordshire may be abound in the gaieties which that season generally brings, and that your beaux will be so numerous as to prevent your feeling of loss of the three whom shall deprive you. It is evident by this, added Jane, that he comes back no more this winter. It is only evident that Miss Bingley does not mean that he should. Why do you think so? It must be his own doing. He is his own master, but you do not know all. I will read you the passage which particularly hurts me. I will have no reserves from you. Mr. Darcy is impatient to see his sister, and, to confess the truth, we are scarcely less eager to meet her again. I really do not think Georgina Darcy has her equal for beauty, elegance, and accomplishment, and her affection she inspires in Louisa and myself is heightened into something still more interesting from the hope we dare to entertain of her being hereafter our sister. I do not know whether I ever before mentioned to you my feelings on this subject, but I will not leave the country without confiding them, and I trust you will not esteem them unreasonable. My brother admires her greatly already. He will not have frequent opportunity now of seeing her on the most intimate footing. Her relaxations all wish the connection as much as his own, and a sister's particularity is not misleading me. I think I will, when I call Charles most capable of engaging any woman's heart. With all these circumstances to favour an attachment, and nothing to prevent it, am I wrong, my dearest Jane, in indulging the hope of an event which will secure the happiness of so many? What do you think of this sentence, my dear Lizzie? Said Jane, as she finished it. It is not clear enough. Does it not expressly declare that Caroline neither expects nor wishes me to be her sister, that she is perfectly convinced of her brother's indifference, and that she suspects the nature of my feelings for him? She means, most kindly, to put me on my guard. Can there be any other option on the subject? Yes, there can. For mine is totally different. Will you hear it? Most willingly. You shall have it in a few words. Miss Bingley sees that her brother is in love with you, and wants him to marry Miss Darcy. She follows him to town in hopes of keeping him there, and tries to persuade you that he does not care about you. Jane shook her head. Indeed, Jane, you ought to believe me. None of whom has ever seen you together can doubt his affection. Miss Bingley, I am sure, cannot. She is not such a simpleton. Could she have seen half as much love in Mr. Darcy for herself, she would have ordered her wedding clothes. But the case is this. We are not rich enough or grand enough for them, and she is the more anxious to get Miss Darcy for her brother, from the notion that when there has been one intermarriage, she may have less trouble achieving a second, in which there is certainly some integrity, and I dare say it would succeed if Miss de Bourgh were out of the way. But, my dearest Jane, you cannot seriously imagine that because Miss Bingley tells you that her brother greatly admires Miss Darcy, he is not in the smallest degree less sensible of your merit than when he took leave of you on Tuesday, or that it will be in her power to persuade him that Instead of being in love with you, he is very much in love with her friend. If we thought alike of Miss Bingley, replied Jane, your representation of all this might make me quite easy. But I know the foundation is unjust. Caroline is incapable of witfully deceiving anyone, and all that I can hope in this case that she is deceived herself. That is right. You could not have stated a more happy idea. Since you will not take comfort in mine, believe her to be deceived by all means. You have now done your duty by her, and must fret no longer. But, my dear sister, can I be happy even supposing the best in accepting a man whose sisters and friends are all wishing him to marry elsewhere? You must decide that for yourself, said Elizabeth. And if, upon mature deliberation, you find that the misery of disobliging his two sisters is more than equivalent to the happiness of being his wife, I advise you by all means to refuse him. How can you talk so? Said Jane, faintly smiling. You must know that though I should be exceedingly grieved upon their disappropriation, I could not hesitate. I did not think you would. And that being the case, I cannot consider your situation with much compassion. But if he returns no more this winter, my choice will never be required. 1,000 things may arise in 6 months. The idea of his returning no more Elizabeth treated with the utmost contempt. It appeared to her merely the suggestion of Caroline's interested wishes, and she could not for a moment suppose that those wishes, however openly or artfully spoken, could influence a young man so independent of everyone. She represented to her sister as forcibly as possible that what she felt on the subject, and soon the pleasure of seeing its happy effect. Jane's temper was not desponding, and she was gradually led to hope, though the diffidence of affection sometimes overcame the hope, and that Bingley would return to Netherfield and answer every wish of her heart. I'm going to be honest, I majored in English and literature in uni, and I still got no idea what disapprobation is. I don't know either. I assume in this context... Where did I read it? Disapprobation. Grieved at their disapprobation. Disposition. I think this is a very, very posh disposition. Maybe. I don't know. Stretch! Oh, I gotta stretch. 1 second. Stretch done. Stretch is important. Beginning. Grieved at their disapprobation. They argued that Mrs. Bennet should only hear of the departure of the family without being alarmed on the score of the gentleman's conduct. But even this partial communication gave her a great deal of concern, and she bewailed it as exceedingly unlucky that the ladies should happen to go away just as they were all getting so intimate together. After lamenting it, however, at some length, she had the consolation of thinking that Mr. Bingley would be soon down again, and soon dining at Longbourn. And the conclusion of all was the comfortable declaration that, though he had been invited to a family dinner, she would take care to have 2 full courses. Bryony gotta stretch so she can one day get tall. Don't want to get too tall, but if I get really, 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 really tall, then I could squish everyone. I could step on everything and everyone and destroy the whole world like Godzilla! What am I selling? Oh my gosh, what am I selling? I talked about my books before, but have you checked my online website store? It has so much cool stuff. It has all my books in it, my superhero published books. You can get ebook versions of all of them. You can get the short story collection called Tales from a Trapped Writer, which is about my time in the library, and also some other short stories that I've written that are about, Brady, I am 2 meters, it's not worth it. Get taller, 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 taller. And then there's a pillow. There's a pillow with a chibi on it, and it's really good. It's really soft, and I could show you, but my boyfriend stole that pillow because it's so good. You should get the pillow. And there's also a notebook. It's a really good notebook. I like using it. I've used mine a lot. It's really good. It's a lined notebook. You can write all sorts of secret notes in there. And there's also stickers. My emotes. Do you like my emotes? You can get the stickers. But yeah, you should check out that the link in the description to my website. Yay! Thank you for clicking the what are you selling. That is an unorthodox way of getting tall, Librani, that I know, but it makes it look like a human giraffe. I don't really want that one. That would be kind of naff. That'd be kind of naff. Don't want to be a giraffe. That rhymes. Yay! Oh, God. Oh, yeah. I am sleepy. But that's okay. We're going on to chapter 22. What is going on here? The Bennets were engaged to dine with the Lucases, and again during the chief day was Miss Lucas so kind as to listen to Mr. Collins. Elizabeth took an opportunity of thanking her. "It keeps him in good humour," said she, "and I am more obliged to you than I can express." Charlotte assured her friend that her satisfaction in being useful, and that it amiably repaid her for the little sacrifice of the time. This was very amiable, but Charlotte's kindness extended farther than Elizabeth had any conception of. Its object was nothing less than to secure her from any return from Mr. Collins' address, by engaging them towards herself. Such was Miss Lucas's scheme, and appearances were so favourable that when they parted at night she would have felt almost sure of her success, if she had not been to leave Hertfordshire so very soon. But she did injustice to the fire of independence of his character, for it led him to escape out of Longbourn's house the next morning with amiable slyness, and hasten to Lucas Lodge to throw himself at her feet. I knew it! I knew it! Brescio with the dad jokes here. Glad we're on the same page, since I don't want to see my favourite VTuber like that again now. I don't want to be like a weird yokai. Hello, sweetie, welcome! He was anxious to avoid the notice of his cousins, from a conviction that if they saw him depart, they could not fail to conjecture his design, and he was not willing to have the attempt known till its success could be known likewise. For, though feeling almost secure with reason, for Charlotte had been tolerably encouraging, he was comparatively indifferent since the adventure of Wednesday. His reception, however, was of the most flattering kind. Miss Lucas perceived him from an upper window, as he walked towards the house, and instantly set out to meet him accidentally in the lane. But little had she dared to hope that so much love and eloquence awaited her there. In as short a time as Mr. Collins' long speeches would allow, in as short short a time as Mr. Collins' long speeches would allow. That's fucking hilarious. It's not a weird yokai. It's a thing where people put metal rings on their neck. Oh, that thing. I was thinking about, like, do you know, like, there's, like, the geisha yokai that just has the really long neck? It's wild. But a very cute yokai. Yeah. But also weird. Body horror-y. Everything was settled between them to the satisfaction of both, and as they entered the house he earnestly entreated her to name the day that was to make him the happiest of men, and though such a solicitation must be waived for the present, the lady felt no inclination to trifle his happiness. The stupidity with which he was favoured by nature must guard his courtship from any charm that could make a woman wish for his countenance. And Miss Lucas, who accepted him solely from the pure and disinterested desire of an establishment, cared not how soon that establishment was gained. Sir William and Lady Lucas were speedily applied for their consent, and it was bestowed with a most joyful alacrity. Mr. Collins present circumstances, it was a most eligible match for their daughter, to whom they could give little fortune, and his prospects of future wealth were exceedingly fair. Lady Lucas made directly to calculate, with more interest than the matter had ever. So, hi Delph Game, welcome! So, Elizabeth turned him down, and then he got picked up by the gold digger Miss Lucas, who is not that interested in him, but is interested in his money. It's, hello. So much love and eloquence. Look at that scheming face she's got going there. Oh my, Mr. Collins. How much money did you say Lady Deborah gives you again? Excited before how many years longer Mr. Bennet was likely to live, and Sir William gave it as his decided opinion that whenever Mr. Collins should be in possession of the Longbourn estate, it would be highly expedient that both he and his wife should make their appearance at Sir James's. The whole family, in short, were properly overjoyed on the occasion. The younger girls formed hopes of coming out a year or two sooner than they might have otherwise done, and the boys were relieved from their apprehension of Charlotte's dying an old maid. Charlotte herself was tolerably composed. She had gained her point, and had time to consider it. Her reflections were, in general, satisfactory. Mr. Collins, to be sure, was neither sensible nor agreeable. His society was irksome, and his attachment to her must be imaginary. But still he would be her husband. Without thinking highly either of men or of matrimony, marriage had never been her object. It was the only honourable provision for well-educated young women of small fortune, and, however uncertain of giving happiness, must be their pleasantness preservative from want. I know Mr. Collins' weakness. It's called paying attention to him. I have $1 million, though. Sure, you wouldn't want to square dance? Just kidding. This preservative she had now obtained, and at the age of 27, without having ever been handsome, she felt all the good luck of it. The least agreeable circumstance in the business was the surprise it must occasion to Elizabeth Bennet, whose friendship she valued beyond that of any other. Elizabeth would wonder, and probably would blame her, and though her resolution was not to be shaken, her feelings must be hurt by such disapprobation. Actually, it's just that he's a bleeder. But that one's a close second. She resolved to give her the information herself, and therefore charged Mr. Collins, when he returned to Longbourn to dinner, to drop no hint of what had passed before any of the family. A promise of secrecy was, of course, very dutifully given, but it could not be kept without difficulty, for the curiosity excited by his long absence burst forth in the very direct questions on his return, as required some ingenuity to evade, and he was, at the same time, exercising great self-denial, for he was longing to publish his prosperous love. As he was to begin his journey too early on the morrow to see any of the family, the ceremony of leave-taking was performed, when the ladies moved for the night, and Mrs. Bennet was with great politeness and cordiality, said how happy they should be to see him at Longbourn again, whenever his other engagements might allow him to visit. "My dear madam," he replied, "this invitation is particularly gratifying, because it is what I have been hoping to receive, and you may be very certain that I shall avail myself of it as soon as possible." They were all astonished, and Mr. Bennet, who could by no means wish for so speedy a return, immediately said, "But is there not danger of Lady Catherine's disapprobation here, my good sir? You had better neglect your relations than run the risk of offending your patroness." "My dear sir," replied Mr. Collins, "I am particularly obliged to you for this friendly caution, and you may depend upon my not taking so material a step without her ladyship's concurrence. You cannot be too much on your guard, risk anything rather than her displeasure, and if you find it likely to be raised by your coming to us again, which I should think exceedingly probable, stay quiet at home, and be satisfied that we shall take no offence. Believe me, my dear sir, my gratitude is warmly excited by such affectionate attention, and depend upon it that you will speedily receive from me a letter of thanks for this, as well for every other mark of your regard during my stay in Hertfordshire. As for my fair cousins, though my absence may not be long enough to render it necessary, I shall now take the liberty of wishing them health and happiness, not excepting my cousin Elizabeth." With proper civilities, the ladies then withdrew, all of them equally surprised to find that he meditated a quick return. Mrs. Bennet wished to understand by it that he thought of paying his address to one of her younger girls, and Mary might have been prevailed to accept him. She rated his abilities much higher than any of the others. There was a solidarity in his reflections which often struck her, and though by no means so clever as herself, she thought that, if encouraged to read and improve himself by such an example as hers, he might become a very agreeable companion. So even Mumsy admits that he's not really husband material, but he might become husband material. "We can fix him! We can fix him!" says Mother. "No, we can't, Mum! We can't! He's terrible! We can't fix him!" But on the following morning, every hope of this kind was done away. Miss Lucas soon called after breakfast, and in a private conference with Elizabeth, related the events of the day before. The possibility of Mr. Collins fancying himself in love with her friend had once occurred to Elizabeth within the last day or two, but that Charlotte could encourage him seemed almost as far from possibility as that she could encourage him herself, and her astonishment was consequently so great as to overcome the first bounds of decorum, that she could not help crying out, "Engaged to Mr. Collins, my dear Charlotte! Impossible!" The steady countenance which Miss Lucas had commanded in her telling the story gave way to momentary confusion on receiving so direct a reproach, though, as it was no more than she expected, she soon regained her composure and replied, Why should you be so surprised, my dear Lisa? Do you not think it incredible that Mr. Collins should be able to procure any woman's good opinion, because he was not so happy as to succeed with you? I got him on the rebound. It's not your job to fix him. It's not! But Mum still wants to fix him! But Elizabeth had now recollected herself, and making a strong effort for it, was able to assure with tolerable firmness that the prospect of their relationship was highly grateful to her, and that she wished her all imaginable happiness. I see what you are feeling, replied Charlotte. You must be surprised, very much surprised, so lately as Mr. Collins was wishing to marry you. But when you have had the time to think it all over, I hope you will be satisfied with what I have done. I am not romantic, you know. I never was. I ask only a comfortable home, and considering Mr. Collins's character, connections, and situation in life, I am convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people can boast on entering a marriageable state. Elizabeth quietly answered, undoubtedly. And after an awkward pause, they returned to the rest of the family. Charlotte did not stay much longer, and Elizabeth was then left to reflect on what she had heard. It was a long time before she became at all reconciled with the idea of such unsuitable a match. The strangeness of Mr. Collins making 2 offers of marriage within 3 days was nothing in comparison of his now being accepted. She had always felt that Charlotte's opinion of matrimony was not exactly like her own, but she could not have supposed it possible that, when called into action, she would have sacrificed every better feeling to worldly advantage. I like to imagine Charlotte's actually very ace, and is just like, look, I just want someone who can pay for me. Mr. Collins, I'm happy to settle. I don't need a romantic partner. I just want to be looked after. Charlotte, the wife of Mr. Collins, was a most humiliating picture, and a pang of a friend disgracing herself and sunk in her esteem was added to the distressing conviction that it was impossible for that friend to be tolerably happy in the lot she had chosen. Ah, so she actually feels really bad for her, because she's like, well, Mr. Collins is a dick. She had to settle for a dick. Protest he must be entirely mistaken. But that, whether he is mistaken or no, is where we shall end the stream for today. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much, guys. It's great. Well, that's the stream, I guess. It is the stream, I guess. One second, let me take a drink before I start thanking and doing all that stuff. Yeah. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you everyone in chat. Thank you everyone who lurked. Thank you anyone who watches the VOD. Thank you for the new subs. Thank you for the bits. We got a hype train going. That was exciting. Very exciting. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you have not already, I would highly appreciate it if you could, if you're on YouTube, if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. We are 34 subs away from 5k on YouTube. How bonkers is that? Crazy bonkers. And when we get to that, we will have a 3D karaoke stream and a subathon, which will be exciting. And if you have not already on Twitch, if you could go follow that. I need to think of something for the 100 milestone on Twitch, so if you have any recommendations for that, for 100 milestone stream, 100 followers on Twitch, please feel free to recommend that. Best ways to recommend me things is to get your ass in the Discord, and there's a suggestion box in there. I love it when people put stuff in there. It's great. You can always go back to it and check stuff out. It's a great way to sort of remember where it all is. Can't wait to get you Hype Train level 50. So you'll eat a hot pepper. So we can have a hot stream. So we can ask you hot questions. Because you're never gonna get on hot ones. You can buy the hot one sauces though, can't you? So I could buy like a set of the hot one sauces and some wings. We could do that. We could do our own little hot ones video stream thing. But also, you know what you can also do? You can make it so that I can stream more by quitting my job one day. And you can do that multiple ways. You can join YouTube memberships where you get emotes, exclusive streams, a Discord channel, and merch discounts. You could join the Patreon. I hope you got a Chick-fil-A. We don't have Chick-fil-A in the UK. So it would just be, I don't know, some oven wings. We don't have Chick-fil-A. We actually don't really have any fast food wing places now I think about it. The KFC do some bone stuff, but they do like chicken thighs, don't they, when they do wings? Yeah, we don't really have any fast food wing places in the UK. Oh! No, wait. I got distracted. I was going to tell you about going to Taco Bell at the weekend. Because Taco Bell is also a very rare fast food place in the UK. And it was very exciting to go to Taco Bell. Because even though it wasn't that great. But, you know. I can't wait for you to get to Hype Train level 100 so you can play Ruiner without help. I hope by the time we get to Hype Train level 100 that I've already beaten Ruiner once, so it's fine. You're being blunt about the job quitting thing. I thought about trying to give you 10 grand so you... I mean, I could do it for a bit with the 10 grand. It needs to be more steady coming in is the thing. Or I need to budget it more kind of thing. I don't know. It's tricky. Finances are hard. But Patreons definitely help. Because they get short stories, exclusive streams, merch discounts, and free books. There's also the merch store where you can get ebooks, first edition copies of books I've written, bookmarks, key rings, t-shirts, a notebook, and even a pillow and some stickers. And that's all I got for you. That's the shilling. That's the stream. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I really appreciate it. That was a really fun stream. We are 37% of the way through this book. We are going slowly through this book. But that's okay. I'm working on a goal of where I try to earn a livable amount per week with my job. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to make a livable amount with the streaming. So that I don't have to worry about my job. That's the goal! And we're working on it. But for now, it is sleepy time. Indeed, Bressy, it is sleepy time. I hope everyone else has a lovely day, lovely evening, lovely morning. Whatever happens to be for you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone in the chat. Thank you, everyone who lurked. Thank you to everyone who watches the VOD. I really appreciate you interacting whichever way. You gotta slow down and enjoy the sass coming left and right in this book. I really do. I will see you guys tomorrow. And we'll be going and doing some more game dev. We'll be doing more game dev tomorrow. I will see you then. I had fun. I hope you had fun. This has been Brand New Smith, live from the Forbidden Library. Goodbye.